been a highly intensive few days for some businesses in Lagos, which have been caught in the controversy surrounding the takeoff of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road Highway. Not least amongst them, the popular landmark beach and resorts, an apparently $200 million investment, which, according to the Minister of Works, David Umahi, must give way for the realization of the gigantic project. As we speak, the contractor is breaking no strides, despite a lot of public opinion which tends to err on the side of caution, given the current economic situation in the country. Many have argued that the National Assembly should have played a major role in the conceptualization of this project. To help us with some perspective on this matter, we are now being joined by Honorable Terseer Ugbor, Vice Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on the Environment. Good morning and many thanks for being here, sir.
Good morning. Thanks
for having me. Honorable Terseer Ugbor.
Terseer Ugbor. My sincere apologies for butchering your name this morning. So let's talk about the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway project. We've been talking a lot about the EIA and the environmental consequences of this project. Was the House of Reps approached about the project? Have your committee investigated this project, especially considering environmental consequences it may have?
Okay, thanks for having me again. Well, the truth of the matter is that the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment Act, was a decree in 1991 during the military regime. It hasn't been amended or upgraded since then. It's one of the most abused environmental laws in the country, but it's supposed to be one of the most powerful tools to ensure that projects have environmental and social impact assessments before they are executed. So the purpose of the EIA is to ensure that before a project is executed, the cost to the environment is properly analyzed, possible mitigation and adaptation efforts are put in place so that the habitat loss, the loss of the ecosystems and things like that are properly mitigated before the project is executed. And then, of course, the social aspect of it, tourism, job losses and things like that are also considered and valued, in vis-a-vis the worth of the project and the value of that particular project to the economy before it is executed. But unfortunately, like I said, the EIA is a really abused law. It is not oftentimes not really followed by public projects in the country. But it has been followed a few times. If you remember the Calabar superhighway that the previous administration tried to do, it was blocked because it didn't meet the EIA guidelines. It was going to eat deep into the national park, which is a protected forest area in the country. And because of that, the project was halted completely. It was the EIA that helped to stop that project from going ahead. So yeah, the EIA works, but in this case, I think the value of this project to Nigeria supersedes the costs to the businesses and things like that along that coastal region. And that is why the federal government has decided to go full steam ahead to make sure that this project is executed. And there are some international dimensions to it. Maybe we'll go into that a little bit. Because there's the Trans-West African coastal highway that goes from Nigeria to Senegal, or from Senegal to Nigeria, and then from Nigeria all the way to Cameroon to Mombasa in East Africa. And this is a United Nations, an AU project. Nigeria is also part of that. And the aspect of the project from Nigeria to Cameroon currently goes through Enugu to Cameroon and then to Douala, Yaoundé, down to East Africa. But that is an old route. So I think the thinking of this project, this project, I think this is 2007 or something, since this project was conceptualized, was that we need to have a new route of, coastal routes that takes the pressure off the inland routes, that we have in the country, the pressure on the roads inland. So with the coastal route, so the road that comes, the West African coastal route from Senegal, cutting through 12 African countries, all the way to Nigeria, and then to Cameroon, and then to Mombasa, which is in Kenya, needs to pass through this coastal route. And so it has an international dimension for trade, for investment, for a lot of other benefits for Africa as a whole. And so I think those benefits for Nigeria as a country, for trade in this country, for the economy of the country, and for the pressure on the inland routes, from Lagos through Enugu and all the way to Cameroon, supersede whatever value the landmark tourist attractions offer. And that is why the federal government has considered this project to be more important than the tourism project of landmark.
All right. Yes, that sets the tone in a rather good way. But I'm interested in pushing this a bit, further. The EIA component of it. When you say that it's one of the most abused laws in Nigeria, I would like further clarity and tying it to this particular project, which is probably one of the biggest, road construction projects, in Nigeria in recent times. I get the point of the international dimension. I get the pressure on the federal government. But are we specifically saying that because the expected gains far outweigh the immediate concerns, federal government has decided to bully its way? Or are we saying that there's a preliminary or what do they call it? Approval from the Ministry of Environment, which you have oversight, functions over. Are you aware if there was at any point a preliminary approval or an approval at all? And what is the thinking of your committee on this project?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not aware if there was approval or a preliminary approval. The minister mentioned it during the exchange.
He wasn't particularly clear about what he said, but I mean...
all is in order.
Yeah, he said all is in order, and due process has been followed. Yeah. And when a public servant speaks, we want to take him for his word. Before we crucify him. So he said all is in order, due process has been followed, a preliminary approval has been gotten for the EIA. We hope to see that. These issues are kind of emerging. As a committee, we were just having a discussion a few days ago when this whole thing came to light, that we need to, number one, amend, in fact repeal and reenact the EIA Act. I've gotten memoranda on that already. So we're working on some adjustment to the EIA, so that it can become more of an ESIA, so that the social aspect is also included in the EIA. We are also considering inviting...
Environmental social impact assessment.
Environmental and social impact assessment, because it's not just the environmental assessment, but the social impacts too.
Okay.
So we're looking at how we can reform the EIA Act to cover the social aspects of these things. And then as a committee, usually what we do, the executive arm has their policies, they have their vision, and they set up mechanisms to achieve it.
Yeah.
They also allocate funding to achieve these things. But for this aspect, for this particular project, what we are going to do, what we intend to do, is to seek audience with the Minister of Works and then the Minister of Environment, so that they can come and provide some clarity to the National Assembly on how well or how far they went towards looking at the environmental impact and social impacts of this project, so that we can be on the same page with the government and we'll be in a better position to defend the actions of government as regards this project. But I'm aware that the government had budgeted 2.7 billion to compensate landmark and other businesses along that route. I know that has started, that is ongoing. I know there's been a lot of engagement. I know the minister also visited landmark to engage with them. So there's been several series of engagements. So sometimes I read in the news that government, like you said, government is bullying its way through, government has not engaged with them. But I think that is not completely accurate, because I know there's been engagement, there's been talks. It's really painful, for landmark to lose this beautiful piece of land where, this business is flourishing. Like you mentioned, probably worth over 200 million in investments. The component that is being demolished obviously cannot be the entire project. The entire landmark is probably a section of it. They'll probably lose some business, some revenue, from the aspect that has been demolished. But overall, I think for the interest of Nigeria, for the interest of this project, the benefit of this project long term, for Nigerians as a whole, and for international trade, for local trade, I think this project is worthwhile. I think it's something that needs to happen. Nigeria has not executed a major project like this for a long time, Will
you consider this to be priority at this time?
Well, if you ask me for my own priorities, speaking personally, I would have said how many trillion naira should have maybe invested in power, we need power in the country. So that would be my own priority if I was to, conceptualize this. But this is a government that has come in. This project has been in the works for many, many years. Obviously, it has been a priority for governments in this country, and that is why it has always been on the table somehow. Probably because of the international dimension, we know to also participate in connecting these routes, for international trade across Africa. And the United Nations is highly involved in this. ECOWAS is involved. Many other organizations are really involved in this coastal highway project across West Africa. I think just for the sake of our economy, our public engagement with our neighboring countries, and then most importantly, even inside Nigeria, I think it's a project that it's a priority project for us. We can prioritize several things at the same time. This is one of them. It's a really expensive project, but I think if we successfully execute it, even though I heard it's going to take 8 years or so to build the road, 8 years is not so long. If you remember the bridge that collapsed in the US recently, they announced that it would take 10 years to rebuild it. It's just a short span of bridge, So these infrastructure projects take time to build. They're really expensive, but when they are done, they last for many, many decades, and they add so much value to the economy.
All right, then. I mean, some critics obviously are arguing that the coastal road projects may have been rushed without sufficient consultation and the consideration of alternative options. Leila Johnson-Salami, who is our environmental correspondent, had already been following the damage that had been caused by these coastline erosions even before we saw this breakdown of the landmark beach. She had spoken about even speaking with communities that live along that coastline in Okwafa all the way down. And when you think about, like you've rightfully said, it's a great project. It's a good thing for us to have this coastal highway. But then again, when you bring it back to the fact that we don't fully understand what we're getting ourselves into based on the impacts, because there has to also be an environmental management plan. We're already seeing what all that sand filling from Eco-Atlantic is doing to a lot of these communities. So at this point in time, are we saying that in itself, building this coastline or this coastal highway is more important than actually these communities that have been there for years? And my second question, when you think about the fact that even on the day that, I think it was on Wednesday when that meeting was held at Eco Hotel, and there was a quick switch where the minister had said, there's going to be a quick a slight change to the plan that was already in place that was going to run through some ancestral homes. So if there was a plan that was already set up, and then now that we're about to see the project commence, they are now switching those plans. For someone who had no idea that they were going to be affected, is compensation enough to actually go through the ancestral homes?
Well, I think for national interest, the federal government always we have given our sovereignty to federal government to do what is in the best interest of the generality of the people. And one of those interests is for government to take over land when the need for that land supersedes personal interest for national interest. So yes, communities will surely be affected. Communities will need to be relocated and compensated for this kind of infrastructure projects to go on. This happens, I think, across the world when major infrastructure projects are to be constructed. Apart from just communities, there are mountains, rocks, the oceans and rivers that the bridge or the road will have to, pass through or meander through or go around. So in the course of construction, I'm sure in the engineering designs of this project, they must have considered what obstacles there will be along the line, both human obstacles and natural obstacles, and would have come up with some plan to how to either bypass these obstacles or just bulldoze through them and compensate where there's need for compensation. So, but we're a country, we are one people, and when there's a need for a major infrastructure project that adds so much to the Nigerian economy, then communities will obviously have to be affected. But I also think that there's also the plus side to it, even for communities. When a major highway passes through a community, that community automatically becomes a city, becomes a bigger town, So it's all about looking at it from both the impact, the negative impact that it may have on the environment and on people's livelihoods, but also on the plus side where communities that now have highways passing through them can set up tourist attractions, now they have people coming through. They have a lot of other things happening. There's trade, ongoing trade now through their communities. So if these communities can come together, try to look on the positive side of it, try to see how this road can become a plus to these communities, how this road coming through can help the communities to even expand better, to open and even become cities in their own rights. I think maybe we'll be able to be on the same page on how we can all benefit, both as a country and as individual communities, benefit from this kind of project. So I'm not too worried. I know there will be some pains, there always is, but at the end of the day, I think if we try to look on the positive side of this infrastructure, even for communities, there's a lot of benefit to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Well, you said you're not too worried, but I would ask that, should we, especially people in Lagos, be worried, as Shaitan highlighted earlier and as Leila had highlighted, about coastal erosion, about flooding, about regions within Lagos that are at risk of severe environmental damage? Sometimes it rains, it started raining now, we're grateful because it's not as hot. But sometimes, there is threat of parts of Lagos being underwater and actually being flooded out. And so we have no idea the long-term environmental impact of this project. So do you believe that it is well within the rights of the people of Lagos State to say, we are worried about what this is going to do to affect the Ibeju-Lekki access, to affect other communities, not just the communities that the bridge is running through, but the environmental impact that we might see? And also, I want to ask you, you're a representative from Benue State, I want to ask you the type of environmental challenges that we're facing, not just in Lagos, but also maybe in your region, and what the government can do to be more proactive about protecting our people from long-term climate change and environmental conditions.
Yeah, I think, this is one of the most important issues globally. This is one of the most important issues on the minds of everybody, environmental issues. They're always, environmental issues are usually downplayed. But at the National Assembly, we made it one of our legislative agendas, climate change and environmental sustainability. It's a standalone agenda on our 10th Assembly agenda, because we realize the importance of environmental degradation, habitat loss, climate change, pollution, and all that. Nigeria faces a diverse range of environmental issues. This coastal road, like you said, could have some impact on, flooding and, habitat loss and things like that. Not every part of the coastal road needs to be right beside the beach. When they say coastal road, it sounds like they're just going to be a bridge from one end to the other end, all on the water or right on the beach, but that is actually not how it works. A lot of times the road goes a little bit inland, so it's not necessarily right beside the beach. But it's called a coastal road because it's on the coastal end of the country, but not necessarily on the beach itself. So hopefully the planners of this project, the engineers, have engaged environmental consultants who have looked at every angle to this project and have come up with a plan. And this is why there's need for engagement with Lagosians, especially those that reside or have infrastructure investment in the affected areas. There's need for more engagement. There can never be enough engagement. The talk just has to keep going on, to keep convincing and assuring the people that this is going to be for the benefit of themselves and for the country. This is very important, and this needs to go on. And I completely support that this engagement should go on as long as necessary until people are satisfied and convinced that this will go on. Not everybody will be satisfied. Not everybody is willing to lose a plot of land or lose a project along the coastal highway. But at the end of the day, ultimately, for the national interest of the country and because of the impact on people's lives, government just needs to continue to engage, and that is why I also agree to come here so that we can shed some light on the benefits and and the impacts that this kind of project could have on the country. I'm an environmentalist, so of course I always side on the side of the environment. But there are times when economic considerations, social considerations also have to play a part in decision making and things like this, and you have to kind of accept some habitat loss. But like the one I mentioned earlier, the Calabar superhighway, the government couldn't accept that. The National Park Service would not accept even an inch into the national park, you know, because the national park is a protected area by law. It's one of the last surviving national, you know, habitats that we have, with the chimpanzees, the gorillas, and most of the you know, the wildlife species that we have in the country reside in that national park.
Yes.
So we can't afford to lose that. We've lost too much wildlife already in the country. So that was a no-go area, and that is why that project was completely killed. You know, but for this, I think the benefits of this and the impact on the environment for this is a little bit less. There's not a lot of wildlife, you know, along there. There are mangroves, you know, they talk about the flooding.
Are you referring to only the Lagos part of it? Because this is a road project that will move across 7 to 9 states.
Yeah.
And we do not have the full picture of, you know, the areas where the road will pass through. So we can't say, as at this point, you know, if wildlife or if parks, you know, etc. will be affected.
No, well, I say that because I know about the national parks where they're located. There are a few of them. The road they pass through Ogun, pass through, you know, through Bayelsa and all that, you know, all the way to Cross River. I don't think the road cuts into any major national park. I don't think it's into any of our preserved national, you know, reserve areas where there's wildlife, there's habitats where we're trying to protect. So I don't think there's a protected area where this road just bulldozes through.
Can I ask that the reason we don't know where the road passes through is because possibly we have not been able to see a preliminary approval of an ESI.
The entire stretch.
So you know, if there is this approval given to the journalists, given to the media, to the public, we would know what the environmental and social impact would be along the whole route. But as we are now, we're finding out part and parcel information. The route is changing day to day, so we can't. You know, it would say that it's difficult to determine what's the actual environmental impact of this bridge would be. And as a member of the House of Reps and a member of the Committee on the Environment, you have oversight responsibility, right? You are our legislator, so you are our line of defense when it comes to environment against the federal government.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
We've decided that we're going to reach out to the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Environment to provide more clarity to us so that we can share with Nigerians on our findings on this project, the impacts of this project on the environment and the social impact on people's lives. And once we get better clarity on this, then we'll make this information available. It is one of when you talk about separation of powers, you know, in Nigeria, this is the kind of things that you have. These are sometimes the kind of maybe lapses or gaps that exist where we have to chase information from the executive arm of government. So we can also get clarity, just like you are also seeking clarity. It is different from, say, a parliamentary system of government where the president or the prime minister and all the ministers are part of parliament. So the decisions to execute projects or things to do in the economy come from the parliament because the executive arm of government are a product of the parliament. So we are all on one page. But in our presidential system of government, the executive arm of government executes projects. We oversight. So a lot of times we have to chase information. We have to do investigative hearings to get information out of them. And then with the information we gather, then we take decisions either to recommend that projects be suspended, be stopped, or we propose to defund this project, to cut allocations to this project if we feel that the project do not meet certain national or environmental standards in this kind of case.
All right.
So
it makes you wonder what the rush is if we don't have the full picture. But let's even talk about, you know, this compensation that has been set up. You know, we see this establishment of the committee that will be giving these compensations to those affected as a positive step. But in your opinion, what criteria should this committee use in determining the appropriate compensation amounts? How can they ensure that the affected individuals are treated fairly and equitably? Because we know in certain instances that committees have been set up and they don't, they don't take it all the way, or we find out that there are bottlenecks, and then even that 2.7 billion naira doesn't get to those that actually need it. So in this kind of situation, when we talk about that compensation setup, is that something that you would be overseeing as well to make sure?
My committee will not be oversighting the compensation. That is not part of our jurisdiction. Yeah. But I trust this government. You know, I trust the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because he has shown that he's willing to do things right. He has shown the capacity to take difficult decisions. This project has been in the works for many years, but he has decided to go full hog to implement it. It just shows that he's the kind of person that's ready to take risky decisions that may not be may not be popular with the people, but are necessary, and he's ready to take those hard decisions. The Minister of Works, he, of course, everybody knows the passion that he brings to his job, and I'm sure he will want to protect his image and his name even after he leaves this office. So I don't expect that there will be any issues of corruption or diversion of funds and all that in this case. I expect that the people who deserve compensation will be adequately compensated immediately as at when due. The properties destroyed will be properly valued and compensations paid for those properties. I heard where he mentioned, or I read somewhere where they said that the portion where the landmark project, his actual land doesn't extend to the beach.
Yes.
You know, but he just took advantage and created a tourist resort out of that. So government can make that argument that, look, this land doesn't even belong to you. Yeah. You've used it and you've profited from it for many years. You know, government has to the yes. So but government allowed that happen for public interest, public good. It was a public good he was doing. That's right. So it was allowed to happen. But now government says, oh, we have a use for this now. Yeah. So sorry. You've made it. You've done well over the years. You've made money off this piece of land and all that. But now you need to pull back so we can do what we need to do. Government can make that argument and not even compensate at all. Yes. But government has decided to compensate just to have a human face to this project, and I think that is commendable, and we hope that it is executed properly.
Yes. And I know that we have to go now this way, but just in 10 seconds, I'm wondering if you think that this has been overly politicized, and if you think that there could be political consequences on this, given what the top politicians have been saying, from Atiku to Obi, and now we have the South governors, saying that they support the project. Do you think that this has been, over politicized?
In Nigeria, the word corruption has become part of our daily language. So we tend to just throw it about. Once this is corruption. There's something not going right here. Without even giving the project or giving the government a chance. Sometimes it's really frustrating when a government is trying to achieve results and you just see politicians throwing in all kinds of accusations and all that. Well, we hope that this will not be one of those instances.
Yes. And I truly hope that, as you've said that the president does hard things, even though they might not be popular. I hope that our House of Representatives and your committee in particular would chase this ESIA and make it available to us, no matter how hard it is, and that you would hold those that you have oversight power over accountable, no matter how hard and unpopular it is.
We will definitely try our best.
Okay.
You asked a little bit about Benue, couldn't talk about that, but that's another topic for discussion. There are a lot of environmental.
We'd love to have you
back on the show.
Yeah, sure.